Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In occupied Kashmir, Indian forces have wounded 4 Kashmiris in a bid to quell peaceful protests staged on the arrival of the far-right EU MPs. Indian politicians, journalists and civil society have slammed their visit.
4 MPs abandoned the visit and flew back to their countries after New Delhi denied them permission to talk to locals. Kashmiris defied curfew and held demonstrations across the valley. Occupying troops baton-charged protesters and fired tear gas at them. During this unofficial and private visit, MPs will only get to meet officials of Indian government, not the common people. Earlier, Indian opposition leader Rahul Gandhi said there is something very wrong with the trip. He said the BJP government is taking foreign MPs, not allowing Indian lawmakers to visit the valley. Indian Congress leader Shashi Tharoor called this visit an insult to Indian democracy. The ruling party's own leader Subramanian Swamy asked the government to cancel the visit, calling it immoral. Indian senior journalist Suhasini Haider said the visiting MEPs are anti-immigration and invited by a little-known Indian NGO. Human rights activist Arjun Sethi said the Modi government handpicked EU lawmakers for the visit.
Students of Iran's Shiraz University have held a candlelight vigil and protest against India's annexation of occupied Kashmir. The students said Kashmir issue is a matter of humanity and we will keep protesting until Kashmiris get justice. Students from occupied Kashmir called on Iranian leadership and the world bodies to force India to end its illegal occupation. New Delhi's curfew and the communications blackout has entered 86th day in the valley. 3 people, including a woman, have been wounded in unprovoked Indian fighting in the Buxar sector of the line of control. Pakistan Army says India is deliberately targeting civilians in the area. Last week, Pakistan Army killed 9 Indian soldiers and destroyed 2 bunkers in retaliation to unprovoked Indian fighting. Tensions between India and Pakistan increased after New Delhi revoked the special status of occupied Kashmir on 5th of August. The UN civil aviation body has rejected an Indian complaint against Pakistan for denying permission to overflights by the government aircraft. India had sought permission for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's official plane to cross Pakistani airspace on its way to Saudi Arabia. Responding to India's complaint, the UN's International Civil Aviation Organization said state aircraft do not come under its purview. The ICOA said its jurisdiction is limited to civilian aircraft operations and does not extend to state or military aircraft. Citing India's human rights violations in occupied Kashmir, Pakistan has twice rejected its request for overflights in the last 2 months. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has reiterated his country's support for the Afghan peace process. During a meeting with the US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad in Islamabad, Khan said all the sides should take measures to help reduce violence in Afghanistan. The Prime Minister underlined the need to overcome difficulties in the peace process for stability in the war-torn country. He said efforts aimed at destabilizing the peace process should be discouraged. Khan said Pakistan is ready to play its role as part of a shared responsibility for early conclusion of peace deal. Meanwhile, the US says Pakistan, China and Russia have reaffirmed their support for the resumption and the fast-tracking of Afghan peace process. In a statement, the State Department said all the 4 countries have acknowledged the need for a political settlement in Afghanistan. The statement was issued after US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad's recent talks with the leaders of the 4 states. They also met in Moscow last week for the 4th consultation on the Afghan peace process. Britain's parliament has blocked an attempt by Prime Minister Boris Johnson to hold early general elections on December the 12th. With most opposition parties abstaining, the government's bid to end the political impasse over Brexit fell far short of the required 2/3 majority. Johnson immediately put forward a second plan to legislate for a poll, which will require only a simple majority to pass. The House of Commons will vote again today on Johnson's plan. Hours earlier, the European Union agreed to postpone Brexit for up to 3 months. The law requires Johnson to accept the EU's extension offer. In Iraq, 17 people have been killed and over 850 wounded after security forces opened fire on protesters in Karbala. Protesters want Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi's resignation over rising poverty and unemployment, accusing him of corruption. In a statement, the Defense Ministry has condemned the incident, saying the soldiers do not represent the Iraqi army as a whole. PM Mahdi declared a curfew in Baghdad last night to quell the ongoing anti-government protests. Defying the curfew, thousands gathered at Baghdad's central Tahrir Square for the fourth straight day. 233 demonstrators have been killed this month. Medics say the majority were killed by security forces firing tear gas canisters directly at the protesters' heads. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says Washington will increase economic pressure on Iran over its nuclear program. After meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, Mnuchin said the U.S. maximum pressure policy is working against Tehran. He said Washington's actions have cut off the flow of money to Iran. Tensions between Iran and the U.S. have increased since Washington's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal last year. Washington imposed sanctions on Iran, accusing it of violating the deal. In retaliation, Iran scaled down compliance with the nuclear deal. Russia says Israel must immediately stop building settlements and dismantling Palestinian property in the West Bank. At the United Nations Security Council meeting, Russia's UN envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, called on all the parties to refrain from violence and provocative rhetoric. Nebenzia said Russia is extremely concerned over the situation in West Bank and Gaza Strip. He slammed Israel's plans to annex the West Bank of the Jordan River. The envoy said the situation will sooner or later cause the erosion of an inadmissible virtual border between fragile stability and chaos. Nebenzia called for urgent measures to improve the situation. In Lebanon, protesters continue to pressurize the government by cutting off major highways across the country. The demonstrators are still demanding the government's resignation over alleged corruption and the state of country's economy. Details in this report.
Protesters in Lebanon set up new roadblocks across the country on Monday. This includes the capital, Beirut, where a large number of army personnel have also been deployed. Protesters accuse the military of threatening and beating them.
The army is refusing to negotiate. We told them to use one route and they are still trying to beat and threaten us since early morning. We have been here since 5 a.m. and are still getting a threat every now and then.
Meanwhile, the country's banks have been closed for 9 working days, citing safety concerns. Analysts have also expressed concerns that depositors would try to withdraw their savings when banks open. Still, the protesters say they want to keep Lebanon paralyzed.
We close the roads so people do not reach their work. This is how we increase pressure. This is our way to paralyze the country. They might come to frighten us, but we won't leave. We have been here for 11 days. This is the 12th day, and we will keep the roads closed.
The IMF has urged the Lebanese government to implement reforms and restore stability. The fund added it was analyzing an emergency reforms package Beirut announced last week. But as the demonstrations continue to demand the government's resignation, the crisis remains deadlocked.
In Chile, fresh protests have erupted after President Sebastián Piñera announced a cabinet reshuffle to end 10 days of demonstrations. Meanwhile, the number of protesters killed in Santiago has risen to 20. Demonstrators clashed with the security forces in a wave of protests against social and economic inequality. Officials said shops were looted and fire tore through a shopping center. Protesters have demanded Piñera's resignation as anger grows over low wages, pensions, expensive health care and education. 2 people have died and many others injured after a 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit the southern Philippines. Police say one victim was a 15-year-old high school student. The other was a 66-year-old man. The Philippine Institute of Seismology says the epicenter was 25 kilometers northeast of Tulunan town in Cotabato province. It has also warned of aftershocks. Local media says hospitals in the town of Tulunan, 25 kilometers away, have been evacuated. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. In the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte has lashed out at his Vice President Leni Robredo for criticizing his so-called war on drugs. Speaking in Manila, Duterte offered to put Robredo in charge of law enforcement for 6 months. Robredo has said the president should the failed anti-drug operation because it is tarnishing the country's image. She urged Duterte to allow the United Nations to investigate the anti-narcotics campaign. President Duterte launched the campaign in 2016 to deal with what he claimed was rampant drug addiction. Human rights activists accused the government of violating human rights and killing 27,000 people in 3 years in the name of cracking down on narcotics. In Bolivia, dozens have been wounded in street battles between supporters of President Evo Morales and opposition leader Carlos Mesa. For the second straight week, protesters held rallies accusing Morales of election fraud. The government and opposition figures are blaming each other for the violence. Medics say 30 people were wounded in the eastern city of Santa Cruz. Opposition leader Mesa has urged his supporters to keep up the pressure with strikes and street protests. Morales earlier accused the opposition of staging a coup d'etat. The European Union and the United States, among others, have called for a second-round runoff vote. With protests underway in Lebanon, Iraq, Chile, and Hong Kong, it would be safe to call 2019 the year of rage. Have you ever wondered what it is like to be on the front lines of those demonstrations, facing riot police and tear gas? A new video game from Hong Kong attempts to show us exactly that. Report has the details. This virtual reality game was designed by a group of Hong Kong students. They designed the game so more people can experience what it's like to be a protester in Hong Kong.
Secondly, we hope to also raise international awareness by demoing, imitating these protests, and let the people who didn't ever experience in frontline protests can experience this in the VR version.
The game lets players dodge tear gas canisters and run from riot police, but it doesn't allow the player to inflict any violence or to do anything else illegal.
In the game, it allows you to experience what crisis the frontline protesters might have been through. For example, getting arrested, getting hit by bullet, and getting need to stay away from the danger of those tear gas canisters.
The developers have submitted the game to Steam, a major online video game distributor. They hope it will be made available to the public by next month. It isn't every day that someone develops a new and original way of making art, but this is what Nigerian artist Yusuf Abugunde has done in his studio in Lagos. This report reveals all.
The man behind the scary mask was making a phone call and waiting for someone to tell him what to write when he began doodling. He is Nigerian abstract artist Yusuf Abugunde. Working in the country's commercial capital, Lagos, Yusuf has become wildly sought after. His walls and interiors are highly popular.
My hand started drawing lines in different motions and on the small paper. Then I didn't call it Ainoism. I really didn't even know my name was Aino until my mom told me. So I decided to keep drawing this same particular patterns, line motions, because it's something I've not really seen before then.
He calls his work Anaism. Each painting can take between 4 and 12 hours and sells for up to $500,000 naira, about $1,400. But there is a serious point to Yusuf's work. His ideas are filled with symbolism of his own inspiration. They're about life, death, love, family and relationships, the past and the present.
When people see it, sometimes they say it's Ojuju art. Some say it's fetish. But the idea is, if we were not colonized by the whites, this is what we will be. You understand?
The mask is part of Yusuf's creative process. It puts him in touch with the work, creates a free imaginative space for him to flourish, and helps make this work entirely his own.
In Australia, climate change protesters have clashed with police outside an international mining conference in Melbourne. Police say they arrested more than 40 protesters, accusing them of being violent. Police used pepper spray and hoses to disperse the demonstrators who blocked the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. The protesters formed a human chain outside the building, demanding an end to the use of fossil fuels. South Africa is bracing for a severe drought while it suffers multiple heat waves and below average rainfall. The country's Water Affairs Ministry has imposed water usage restrictions in major cities. Water Affairs Minister Lindwe Sisulu says her ministry is working hard to avoid running out of water completely. She said reservoir levels have dropped to dangerous levels and rainfall is not expected until December. Sisulu said she will announce a water plan next month. South Africa's government says the country is one of the world's 30 driest nations. Thousands of Los Angeles residents have been told to evacuate because of fast-moving wildfire in California. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti has pledged to extra resources to fight the fire.
The wildfires fanned by the strong winds risk leaving over 1 million homes and businesses without electricity. Flames chased thousands of residents from wealthy LA neighborhoods and threatened the city's famed Getty Center. Celebrities including Arnold Schwarzenegger are among those fleeing the fast-moving Getty fire. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a statewide emergency.
I recognize this moment generates a tremendous amount of anxiety. The high-profile images that people see, not only the Kincaid fire in Northern California, but now the Getty fire in Southern California and Los Angeles, generate consternation, generate concern.
43 of California's 58 counties are under red flag warnings.
So at this point, we're at a 0% containment. We're at 500 plus acres. We're utilizing our air resources and our air assets to really kind of map out what that acreage is.
Satellite images taken by the National Atmospheric Administration show thick smoke plumes from the wildfires.
In California, Olivia Newton-John has put her iconic outfit from the 1978 musical film Grease up for auction. The Australian actor is selling more than 500 items to raise funds for a cancer treatment centre. More in this report.
The black leather jacket with tight black pants and several other glitzy gowns from Newton-John's movies will be auctioned this week. The leather outfit, which marks the character's transition from a demure high school Sandy Olsen to bold Sandy Olsen in Grease, is expected to fetch up to $200,000. Along with the original script of the film, the British-born Australian actress is selling the pink gown she wore to the Los Angeles premiere. Newton-John says it took her a long time to sort through her career memorabilia for the auction, but deciding to sell was easy.
Well, it took a long time. It took quite a few months to, weed through boxes and storage containers, but it was a fun venture. It just took a lot of time and sorting, and it started out really that I was just going to auction off the Grease jacket and pants from my Cancer Wellness Centre in Australia.
After she had breast cancer for the third time this year, the actress helped set up a wellness and research centre in Australia. The treatment center aims to support the mind and the body.
I had my own music therapy, but in the hospital we have music therapy, art therapy, group sessions, yoga. We have a recording studio where patients can write music, and I mean it's really a wonderful part of the centre, and the wellness spreads out to the patients in the rooms. They go up and play music to them, they get hand massages. So this was my dream.
The auction will take place at Julian's Auctions in Beverly Hills, California on Saturday, November the 2nd.
Well, stock markets across Europe are trading lower after the UK Parliament blocked a government bid to hold fresh elections. Investors are sitting on the sidelines awaiting a US interest rate cut expected either today or tomorrow. London's FTSE 100 index is trading nearly 0.5% lower after energy giant BP reported a 40% fall in third quarter profits. The CAC 40 in Paris and Frankfurt's DAX index have also lost fractions. In Asia, the Shanghai Composite closed nearly 1% down. Despite the US considering an extension of tariff exclusions on Chinese imports, Hang Seng lost ground after Chief Executive Carrie Lam reiterated that Hong Kong's protest hit economy recession. Bucking the trend, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 picked up 0.5%. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you may follow us on social media at Indus.news.